Marc Marquez. He never obeyed the same laws of physics as the rest of the grid. Every other rider lives by the unspoken rule. When the front tire lets go, the crash is inevitable. Marquez turned that moment into his signature move. His weirdest strength wasn't corner speed. It wasn't bravery. It was survival beyond logic. From the day he arrived in MotoGP in 2013, the sport changed. He was 20, fresh off a Moto2 title, and from the first laps on the Honda RC 213V, it was obvious. He wasn't just fast, he bent reality. Qatar, Austin, Mugello, same story. The front folded, and somehow he'd save it with an elbow, dragging across asphalt like a hinge between man and machine. Slow motion footage of his saves became religion on MotoGP YouTube. Brno 2014, turn 5. Full lean, front gone. Any other rider would have been cartwheeling. Marquez slid, elbow planted, throttle steady, eyes dead still, and the bike stood back up as if gravity itself gave him a second chance. The commentators screamed. His rivals just laughed in disbelief. What made it truly bizarre was that Honda's engineers eventually designed around his chaos. They stopped trying to build a perfectly balanced machine. They built one that could withstand the abuse only he could give it. They called him a rider who breaks data. Telemetry meant nothing when he was on track. He'd enter corners 10 kilometers per hour faster than the model predicted, still make the apex, and somehow keep the tires alive. And the thing is, it wasn't luck. Marquez trained for disaster. At home, he rode dirt track bikes designed to slide. He crashed hundreds of times deliberately to teach his brain to stay awake during the fall. He learned what the bars felt like, the millisecond before loss of grip, the texture of rescue, the language of chaos. He was teaching his nervous system to react before thought could intervene. In 2019, Thailand, when he fought Fabio Quartararo on the last lap, you could see it all at once. Throttle pinned mid-slide, front chattering, rear skating, still perfect. He didn't ride the limit, he moved it. His weirdest strength? Losing control better than anyone else controls anything. Even after the 2020 Jerez crash shattered his humerus, the legend didn't fade. Years later, every save he makes still triggers collective awe, because deep down, even the other riders know. Marc Marquez plays MotoGP on a difficulty setting built for one. Jorge Lorenzo. His weirdest strength wasn't aggression. It was mathematics disguised as grace. While others braked later, drifted wider, or danced on throttle like jazz, Lorenzo was a symphony in perfect time. He believed racing was repetition, precision, predictability turned lethal. When he led, you could feel the air compress, because once the number 99 Yamaha hit clean air, nobody could touch him. His lap chart looked like a printout from a computer simulator. 1 minute 33.201, 1 minute 33.200, 133.202. Every lap the same, within thousandths. The man was a human algorithm. In Mugello 2013, he led from lights to flag without missing a braking marker by a single meter. His braking zones were measured by habit, his corner exits identical, his posture static, upper body folded over the tank, elbows locked, eyes steady, completely calm. He didn't win with speed. He won by deleting chaos. And that's what made it weird. In a sport built on improvisation, he engineered perfection. Yamaha's engineers loved him for it, because he gave them feedback, like an AI. Front needs 2 clicks softer here. It runs wide by 3 centimeters. They trusted his sensitivity like gospel. He could detect tire drop-off before telemetry did. He could feel temperature shifts before the sensors registered them. And that rhythm wasn't just mental, it was physical. Lorenzo trained his body like a piston. Cycling, breathing, core control, every detail calibrated so his focus never broke. He once said, "When I lead, I stop thinking." That was his zone. No noise, no adrenaline, just flow state. The Mugello 2016 win was the purest form of it. Rossi crashed out. Marquez attacked late, but Lorenzo stayed in rhythm. Last lap, pressure boiling, he didn't flinch. Final corner, perfect drive, 0.019 seconds ahead at the line. Not by instinct, but by design. His weirdest strength was predictability so absolute that nobody could disrupt it. While Marquez's chaos amazed, Lorenzo's orders suffocated. He was the eye of the storm, calm, constant, unstoppable. And that's why, when he retired, engineers said something poetic. With him, we always knew what was wrong with the bike, because he was never wrong. Valentino Rossi, his weirdest strength was invisible, and that's what made it terrifying. He wasn't the fastest on one lap. He wasn't the most consistent on paper, but when you raced him, something inside you you cracked. Because Rossi didn't just beat you on the track, he rewired how you thought about yourself. From the late 90s through the golden 2000s, Rossi turned MotoGP into theater. Every time he looked over his shoulder, it wasn't to check the gap, it was to remind you he was watching. He understood the psychology of sport before sport psychology became a science. Jerez 2005 became the definitive example. Final corner, final lap. Sete Gibernau leads. Rossi feints outside, dives inside, elbows out, touches fairing, forces the line closed, wins by inches. Crowd goes insane. Gibernau doesn't smile. He never wins again. One corner, one scar. Career over. Rossi didn't just win a race. He ended a mindset. He used similar tactics with Max Biaggi, the Roman emperor of arrogance. Their rivalry spilled beyond track limits. Mid-race gestures, post-race shoves, off-track sniping. But Rossi thrived on that friction. He weaponized the crowd, turned MotoGP into a popularity war he never lost. Every yellow 46 flag in the grandstands was another mind he already owned. Inside the paddock, he was both trickster and teacher. He'd joke with mechanics moments before a race, create chaos, and then drop a lap record like it was nothing. That relaxed aura, the smile, the celebrations, the rubber chicken costumes, the banners, it disarmed rivals. They mistook humor for softness. It was camouflage. Rossi knew tension kills reaction time, so he killed tension, his and theirs. Technically, he was brilliant. Smooth braking, adaptable lines, impeccable throttle control. But none of that defined him as much as the fear he planted. When you saw that yellow 46 in your mirrors, you tightened your grip, and that split-second hesitation was all he needed. Even his switch from Honda to Yamaha in 2004, a move many called suicide, was psychological war. He wanted to prove the talent was his, not the machine's. And at Welcome 2004, he did. He beat Biaggi's Honda on debut with the so-called inferior Yamaha. The paddock exploded. The myth became untouchable. Rossi's weirdest strength wasn't measurable in telemetry or data. It was emotional manipulation fused with racing instinct. He understood that races aren't just laps. They're mental battles conducted at 300 kilometers per hour. Every celebration, every mind game, every stare down in Parc Fermé was strategy. He made rivals rage. He made fans adore. And he fed off both. Even late in his career, when younger, faster riders arrived, his presence still warped reality. They weren't just chasing victory, they were chasing him. Casey Stoner, his weirdest strength was that he didn't fight chaos. He danced with it. Every other rider begged for stability. He thrived when the bike tried to kill him. When Stoner climbed onto the Ducati Desmosedici GP7 in 2007, the paddock saw a career ender waiting to happen. That bike was the wildest animal MotoGP had ever produced. A 990cc missile that wheelied in sixth gear, bucked under braking, and snapped high sides like a bull's tail. Riders before him said it was impossible to tame. Then, Stoner showed up and tamed it by instinct. What made him strange wasn't bravery. Every rider is brave. It was perception. He could feel grip that nobody else even knew was there. When others complained about traction, he twisted the throttle harder. When others asked for electronics, he turned them off. He could drift both wheels into a corner, let the rear step out, and still exit faster than riders who stayed in line. Listen to his engineers from that season. He never asks for a softer throttle mat. He just wants the connection pure. He didn't want the bike to obey. He wanted it to speak. At Phillip Island, 2007, you could see the full picture. The front squirming through the wind, rear tire melting, Stoner's body floating like a counterweight. The bike looked unrideable, but lap after lap he got faster. His hands moved with microscopic precision. Small throttle rolls mid-slide, tiny clutch nudges. No panic, no corrections, just fluent chaos. He won that race by 10 seconds, and with it, the world title. One of the youngest champions ever, on a bike most riders feared. That day proved his weirdest strength, feeling traction that physics said didn't exist. Even when he left Ducati for Honda in 2011, the story repeated. The Honda RC212V was twitchy, unpredictable, violent on entry. He didn't fix it. He adapted to it. Within weeks, he was winning again, making impossible corners look effortless. But it wasn't just technique. Stoner's real edge was detachment. He didn't care about fame, politics, or image. He raced for the purity of speed. When journalists tried to bait him, he shrugged. When engineers offered safer options, he said, "I'll ride around it." That clarity, that refusal to be distracted, made him lethal. He left MotoGP at 27, not because he couldn't win, but because the politics disgusted him. And even now, riders still whisper his name like a ghost. The man who could take the most violent machine in the paddock and make it look graceful. His weirdest strength wasn't control. It was the ability to let go, to become one with the bike's chaos, until there was no distinction between fear and freedom. Joan Mir, his strength is so subtle most people miss it, and that's exactly why it works. While others win with drama, Mir wins with discipline. His weirdest strength, vanishing from attention while quietly collecting everything that matters. In 2020, the season of madness, he was the calm at the center. COVID-19 had ripped the schedule apart. Races canceled, no fans, no rhythm. The factories stumbled. Honda lost Marquez to injury. Yamaha imploded with reliability. Ducati lost consistency. And in the middle of the storm, Suzuki rolled out a balanced, patient GS XRR, a bike built for control, not chaos. Mir rode it like an accountant balancing $1 million sheet. Every line clean, every overtake calculated. He didn't chase glory laps, he chased averages. He rarely qualified on pole, but by lap 10, he was always there. 4th, 3rd, 2nd, hovering, studying. He built pressure like erosion, invisible, constant, impossible to stop. And because he wasn't flashy, nobody noticed him building an empire 1 point at a time. By mid-season, he had more podiums than anyone, without a single victory. The commentators kept asking when he'd finally arrive. They didn't realize he already had. His first win came at Valencia, a masterpiece of control. No mistakes, no ego, just clinical speed. He took the championship lead that day and never lost it. A world title with 1 win, unthinkable, yet unarguable. Mir's weirdest strength is his absence of weakness. He doesn't overbrake, doesn't over-accelerate, doesn't panic. He rides like water, shapeless, formless, fitting every track, every condition. When rivals crash trying to win, Mir finishes second. When tires fade, he still has rubber. He weaponizes boredom. Even inside the garage, he was different. While rivals studied data until dawn, Mir simply said, "The bike feels good," and slept. His mind needed quiet. And in a season where everyone else broke under isolation, he thrived. Suzuki hadn't won a title in 2 decades. The factory was tiny compared to Ducati or Honda. Yet with one steady, unshakable rider, they conquered everything. Because Mir understood the most unglamorous truth in racing, that championships are built not on highlight reels, but on what happens when no one's watching. His weirdest strength wasn't power or aggression or flair. It was invisibility, a calm so deep that even chaos gave up trying to touch him. Andrea Dovizioso, his weirdest strength wasn't raw speed. It was calculation so sharp it cut like a knife. Where others raced emotionally, Dovi raced like an engineer trapped in a warrior's body. He read races like equations and solved them under pressure. For years, he was the quiet man at Ducati, overshadowed by louder names. But from 2017 to 2020, when he fought Marc Marquez for 3 consecutive seasons, fans began to see the truth. This wasn't luck. This was intellect turned into horsepower. Austria 2017 is the perfect example. Final corner, final lap. Marquez dives inside, desperate. Dovi waits, half-second pause, lets him slide wide, cuts back, wins. As they crossed the line, Marquez shook his head and Dovi raised a single finger. Chessmate. That wasn't instinct. That was prediction. He knew exactly how Marquez thought when he'd lunge, how much grip he'd have left. He played him like a mirror in race after race. Qatar, Motegi, Spielberg. Every time Marquez attacked, Dovi countered. Every duel ended the same way. Marquez sideways, Dovi smiling. His weirdest strength wasn't cornering or braking. It was awareness. He could sense tire wear like telepathy. He could tell within a lap if the front would fade later. He even read body language, subtle things, a rival shifting on the seat, a widened elbow, a missed apex by inches. Those told him everything he needed. He called it the invisible data. While engineers looked at graphs, Dovi watched human behavior, and his patience bordered on eerie. When the red lights went out, he didn't panic. He let the race come to him, building momentum as tires dropped and nerves frayed. If the track was dry, he managed temperature. If it rained, he managed hope. His duel with Marquez became a modern saga. Brilliance versus brilliance. Logic versus instinct. Sometimes Marquez won on pure aggression. Sometimes Dovi won on cold logic. But every time, fans felt they were watching 2 different species of genius fighting in slow motion. In 2018 at Losail, he read Marquez's draft like a script, positioned himself perfectly, and crossed the line first by 0.027 seconds. The difference between victory and defeat was smaller than a blink, but it was premeditated. That was Dovizioso's world. Milliseconds planned like chess moves. Even his Ducati engineers called him the professor. He spoke in detail, explaining every sensation, every vibration, in ways few riders could. He wasn't emotional, he was diagnostic. And yet, under that calm exterior, there was fire. He spent years in Rossi's shadow, years watching the spotlight pass him by. So when the Desmosedici finally became competitive, he unleashed everything he'd learned. No drama, no noise, just one calculated blow after another. He never won the ultimate crown, but his duels with Marquez became legend because they represented the purest form of racing. Intelligence meeting courage, halfway. Andrea Dovizioso's weirdest strength was simple but rare: patience. In a sport obsessed with instant glory, he proved that waiting, reading, and striking at the perfect millisecond is the most brutal power of all. Aleix Espargaro, his weirdest strength isn't speed, aggression, or raw talent. It's endurance, not the physical kind, the mental one. He spent a decade living in MotoGP's shadows while others lived his dream, and somehow he never broke. For years, he was the grid's journeyman, hopping from satellite Yamaha to CRT machines, from underfunded outfits to last-place factories. He raced bikes that barely finished races, fought just to reach the points, and watched younger riders take factory contracts he could only imagine. Yet every single season, he showed up lean, fit, and hungry. His career was a test of humiliation. When other riders moved on, Alex refused to vanish. He stayed because he believed his story wasn't supposed to end quietly. And that belief became his weirdest strength: longevity without bitterness. When he joined Aprilia, the paddock almost laughed. At that time, Aprilia's RSGP was a disaster. Slow, unstable, and a mechanical nightmare. The bike wheelied when it shouldn't, spun when it shouldn't, and chewed rear tires for breakfast. No top rider wanted it. Alex took it because he wanted a purpose. For 6 years, he worked inside that factory like a soldier in a forgotten war. He became their test mule, their motivator, their public defender when results were ugly. He'd finish 14th on Sunday and still tell journalists, "We're coming. Slowly, but we're coming." Everyone thought it was delusion. It was discipline. By 2022, the miracle finally happened. Aprilia gave him a proper RSGP 22. Lighter, faster, aerodynamically sculpted, and suddenly everything he'd been building towards came alive. Argentina Grand Prix, the moment of redemption. He led from start to finish. When he crossed the line, he screamed into his helmet until his voice cracked. The pit wall was crying. The garage was chaos. Alex had just delivered Aprilia's first ever MotoGP win after 284 starts. That was the weirdest strength revealed in full: the ability to outweight failure itself. He didn't just age well, he improved with age. While the rookies burned bright and faded, he matured into fire at 40. And in 2023, when he beat factory Ducatis in Barcelona and Silverstone, he wasn't supposed to, but he did. Every time Alex stood on the podium, he wasn't just celebrating a race. He was celebrating survival, proof that persistence, when paired with pain tolerance and obsession, can outshine talent. He's the rider who turned endurance into weaponry, the veteran who aged in reverse, and the living proof that the long road sometimes leads to the most beautiful view. Brad Binder. His weirdest strength is nerve. Not bravery, not stupidity. Pure, unfiltered nerve. The ability to keep his foot on the accelerator while the world collapses around him. If there's chaos on track, Binder's name automatically appears near the front. He doesn't calculate it. He senses it. He reads weather, grip, and carnage like a gambler who's memorized every card in the deck. Austria 2021 is forever his signature. The race that looked impossible to finish. The Red Bull Ring was dry for 23 laps. Then the clouds opened. 5 laps to go. Every rider sprinted into the pits for wet tires. Binder didn't. He stayed out on slicks while the rain hammered the track into a mirror. The decision was madness or destiny. By the final lap, the circuit looked like a lake. Binder's bike had no grip, no traction, no braking. He tiptoed through puddles, arms shaking, visor fog, rear sliding through every acceleration zone. Riders on wets flew past him, then crashed. One by one, they fell, hydroplaning into gravel. Binder just kept it upright, feet off the pegs, throttle barely cracked, using body weight to steer because the tires had stopped listening. He crossed the line first, soaked and trembling. His mechanics hugged him like like he'd returned from war. That win wasn't just luck, it was pattern. Binder had done it before, back in Moto3, back in Moto2, choosing chaos when others chose safety. He seems to thrive when the track becomes unpredictable, when logic stops applying. His weirdest strength is a mix of spatial instinct and grip empathy. He can feel microshifts in the tire, tiny slides that tell him what's happening underneath. While others panic, he adjusts throttle and body position faster than his brain should allow. It's not reaction, it's premonition. KTM engineers adore him for this. They call him the human traction control. Even in dry conditions, Binder can sense exactly how far the rear will slide before it spins. He rides with margin, then deletes that margin when opportunity appears. In 2023, he did it again in Argentina. Torrential rain, slippery asphalt, and still a podium. He isn't the flashiest, but when MotoGP turns into survival, he becomes myth. Binder's weirdest strength is that he never waits for perfect conditions. He creates them in his mind. When grip disappears, he rides memory. When vision blurs, he rides trust. When fear takes over, he rides through it like it never existed. It's as if the worse the situation becomes, the clearer his world gets. That's why when it rains or chaos brews, the paddock says the same thing. Find Binder. He's probably leading. Enea Bastianini. His weirdest strength is patience turned violent. He doesn't charge. He stalks. Every MotoGP race has rhythm. A storm at the start, a fade in the middle, and desperation at the end. Bastianini waits through all of it, studying weakness until the moment it's time to strike. You can watch him in any race and see the pattern. The opening laps, conservative. While others fight for track position, he sits quietly in 4th or 5th, maintaining tires, keeping clean air. His body language gives nothing away. Shoulders relaxed, eyes locked, hands smooth on throttle. He looks half asleep. Then the second half begins, and the transformation starts. The beast wakes up. Where rivals begin to slide on used tires, Bastianini suddenly finds more grip. He leans deeper, brakes later, accelerates harder. The others panic, thinking he's on a different compound. He isn't. He's just been waiting. Qatar 2022 was the perfect demonstration. Leading group, Aleix Espargaro, Binder, Marc Marquez. Bastianini stalked them all. Lap by lap, he studied each braking zone, each wobble on exit, each drop in rear tire life. With 6 laps to go, he struck. Clean, surgical overtakes. One corner, one victim. By the final 2 laps, he was leading. And when Binder tried to retaliate, Bastianini had already widened the gap to a full second. It wasn't aggression, it was timing. He wins races not by dominating from the front, but by appearing when everyone else is exhausted. That's why fans call him the Beast. Not for chaos, but for predatory calm. His body control on the Ducati is bizarre. He rides loose, elbows out, back arched, almost lazy. But the telemetry says otherwise. He's among the hardest brakers in MotoGP. He stops the bike using instinct, feeling weight transfer rather than calculating it. And because of that, his tire wear is minimal. His traction superb. His weirdest strength is energy management. He knows how to preserve everything. Tires, brakes, focus, aggression, until the final 5 laps. Then he turns everything loose. Sepang 2022. Same pattern. Bagnaia led, nervous about the title. Bastianini, his future teammate, shadowed him for 20 laps, making him sweat. Every few corners, he'd show the front tire in the mirror. Not attacking, just reminding. Psychological warfare at 300 kilometers per hour. Bagnaia held on, but the message was clear. Bastianini doesn't race for points. He hunts for blood. Even in 2024, returning from injury, he kept the same signature behavior. Slow build, late eruption. He's the rider you forget until the last 2 laps, when suddenly he's there, stealing podiums from men who thought they were safe. What separates him from everyone else is composure. He never looks desperate. His breathing barely changes. He doesn't fight the bike. He listens to it, then uses it like a weapon of patience. Bastianini's weirdest strength is that he races like nature. Quiet, deliberate, inevitable. He's proof that the deadliest moment isn't the start of the race. It's when the predator decides it's time to feed.